Happy Tuesday, everybody. We are so excited to see you guys here with us today. Thank you so much for your time. So my name is Lexi Longeri, and I'll be your trainer for today. We also have Ms. Shai on with us today. She'll be helping us run the chat box. And we have today's training on challenging behaviors when we are discussing prevent, teach, reinforce. And so this is a continuation of information that we with the storm that came through, we were able to record that part one training and put it on our YouTube channel. So that is available if you decide that you'd like to hear that content as well. And some of this will also look familiar from our behavior plan workshop that we had a couple Saturdays ago. But today we are going to look at continuing to address challenging behaviors. So we have our pyramid model, which is a tiered structure of support where we really want to make sure that we have those relationships and those high quality environments in place for all of our students. And we also want to make sure we're teaching those social emotional skills, but for some of our kids, we might have to do a little bit more targeted work. And then for one, maybe two children in our entire classroom, we might have to do some intensive interventions. And so today we're going to continue to talk about how to address challenging behavior within the prevent, teach, reinforce model. So obviously, with challenging behaviors, we really want to hone in on those prevention strategies and teach replacement skills, and then reinforce the behaviors that we want to see. But we do know that even with some of our kids, even when all of those basic levels of practices are in place, we are still going to have some children who do engage in challenging behavior. And so today's session in part two, we're going to look about how to address some of those more challenging behaviors. So the essential strategies of responding to challenging behavior are not new concepts for teachers, and you may already know a majority of them and what to do when challenging behavior occurs in your classroom. So when a problem behavior occurs, we do want to make sure that we are using developmentally appropriate child guidance strategies, which are going to include redirection and planned ignoring, and we'll go over those here in the next couple slides. We also want to make sure that we're responding to the child by telling them what the expected behavior is or stating what to do. So if a child's climbing on a shelf, instead of saying, don't climb on that, we might tell them instead, feet on the floor so that we can stay safe. If a child does start engaging in inappropriate behavior, even if it's just a little bit, we really want to encourage that and provide immediate positive descriptive feedback or positive attention to the behavior that they're following. So as soon as they put their feet on the floor, your feet are on the floor, you are being so safe. Give me a high five. You're awesome. Really make a big deal about it. So when we talk about redirection, this is when we are guiding a child from an inappropriate behavior to a more appropriate behavior. And we can do this by staying calm and interrupting the behavior using very minimal attention, discussion, or emotion. What the child we want to make sure we state what the child can do that would be an acceptable behavior. For example, if a child's banging a car into another child, we might calmly put our hand on the car to block the child from hitting the other child and tell them instead, let's roll the cars gently. And we can even model that behavior by rolling a car to show the child what to do. So if a child takes another child's toy, we might offer a more appropriate social skill by stating something like, you can trade toys with serenity. If we're throwing blocks, we might redirect by saying, let's build. You can put your block here. So we're telling them what to do as an appropriate alternative behavior versus what not to do. Planned ignoring means that we are restricting attention And so we've talked a lot about addressing challenging behaviors and making sure we understand what the behavior is communicating. What is the function of that behavior? And so if we know that this challenging behavior is occurring because the child wants attention, we want to be aware that this planned ignoring could assist in redirecting the child in a more appropriate way. Sorry, guys. I'm losing my voice today. So we want to be aware too that planned ignoring can have some side effects of increased aggression or intensity of the behavior that we are trying to ignore. Because if the child is trying to get attention as the function or the purpose of that behavior, but we're ignoring the behavior, the child might increase that undesirable behavior to get attention. So when we use planned ignoring, it's really extremely important that the child is receiving very high levels of attention for desirable and alternative behavior. So this means that we're going to stay on the lookout for that child to do anything appropriate so that we can give them some positive descriptive feedback. If attention is not the function, then ignoring the child will be less effective. So if we're using this strategy and the child is using that behavior to avoid people, then this is going to reiterate that, and they're getting what they want, and so the behavior is going to continue. If the function of the behavior is to get extra playtime and we ignore the undesirable behavior, but they also have the toy, again, that behavior will continue. So it really comes down to that function or the purpose of that behavior. We do want to reiterate here that when we do planned ignoring, we're ignoring the behavior, not the child. We're ignoring a very specific behavior and paying attention to the child for all other behaviors. We always want to keep them in our eyesight and keep them safe, but we may not give them the attention that they're wanting by using that challenging behavior. Here's some examples of planned ignoring and redirection. So if another child's hurt, we want to make sure that we are attending to the victim and provide brief redirection to the child exhibiting that behavior. So it's going to say something like, Tim, it looks like you got hurt. Come sit with me. Sarah, you can go stack the blocks. So giving them an alternative. If a child makes an outburst during an activity, we want to provide positive feedback to the nearest child engaging in appropriate alternative behavior. So, Darius, you're using your quiet voice and listening ears. That is so respectful. And so, giving that attention to behaviors that we want to continue to see. So when challenging behavior occurs in a classroom, there are additional strategies that may be effective in reducing the likelihood of future challenging behavior. And so if challenging behavior occurs, we as teachers might remind the child of the posted behavior expectations or rules. So let's be kind with our friends and use our gentle hands. We will also want to make sure we're stating natural and logical consequences and follow through with those stated actions. So if we've got a kid throwing blocks, we might say, if you're going to throw the blocks, we'll need to put them away. Keep the blocks on the rug. If the child continues to throw the blocks, then we're going to help that child put away the blocks. We want to also provide support to children who are angry or upset by helping with getting them through those problem-solving steps. So a teacher might offer a support to a child after a challenging behavior. Once the child has calmed down, we're going to walk them through the 4 problem-solving steps. So we may say something like, let's think about the problem. What can we do when the computer center is full? We would help the child evaluate different solutions and then select a solution that fits their needs. So we're going to watch a quick video with a teacher and a child in using challenging behavior. And as we watch this video, we're going to want to think through, is the teacher using developmentally appropriate strategies? Are they responding to the child by stating the expected behavior or providing acceptable alternatives? And then also, are they providing positive attention or positive descriptive feedback when the child behaves appropriately? Let me make sure I have my sound on. So this video is just over 2 minutes. So in this video, the child in the purple has grabbed the yellow square from the other child and in the process poked her in the eye. So we're going to look to see how the teacher is responding to this video and think through those 3 essential strategies. Was the teacher using developmentally appropriate strategies? Did she respond by stating the expected behaviors? And then did she provide positive attention?
Your body was sitting on it. I saw it. I know that makes us sad when you don't get what you want. There are other colors. And, Laura, there is a spot that Katie, you can sit not on a color either. Okay, because you have this. You have this one to sit on. Okay, so I'm gonna start group. Let me know if you need anything else, but I think you can do it. Okay?
Sandy came to help my water.
Yeah. Oh, and if your pointer finger knows where to point, let's point to the pictures too.
You know what this means?
What's that?
The pointer.
Okay, is anybody gonna point with me? Yeah, Katie is. Here we go. We're gonna do our best to ignore her, okay?
Eyes are watching, ears are listening, voices quiet, bodies calm. This is how we listen. This is how we listen. At good time, at good time. Eyes are watching, ears are listening, voices.
Katie has her hand up. What is your question, Katie?
Mine is not problem helper.
Katie says she likes being the problem helper. I like when you're the problem helper too. Friends, if Katie's the problem helper, what can we ask her to do for us today?
If someone has a problem,
If someone has a problem,
fix it.
we can say, Katie, will you come help me solve my problem? And what do you think around the room Katie will go and get for us? Maybe a timer or the solution kit? That's right.
Yeah. Now we can say tap tap.
We could say tap tap.
Yeah.
Very nice. Lara, you have your hand up. Are you the line leader? You get to be the line caboose.
All right, so just in the chat box real quick, we're gonna go through this together. You guys can put yes or no for each of these items. So number 1, do we feel like the teacher used developmentally appropriate strategies here? Got 1 yes. Couple yeses. Yep, so this one is going to be a yes. We do see that she is using that planned ignoring. The child is still allowed to stay there in the group time, even though she is, having, she's really sad and having a hard time regulating at first. So the teacher is using that planned ignoring by ignoring the behavior, but not ignoring the child. Do we feel like she responded to the child by stating the expected behavior in positive terms or provided an acceptable alternative? think we had one yes so far. That's okay, Christy. Okay, so a couple yeses, and so yeah, she is telling her that she can sit on the blue or the purple item, and she's also giving her some time to calm down. And then our last one, did we feel like she provided positive attention or positive descriptive feedback once she was behaving appropriately? A bit quicker. Yeah. And it's all going to come down to how quickly the child can kind of come back around to the appropriate behavior. So we are going to see 3 yeses on this one. And so this was developmentally appropriate. We stated the expectations in a positive manner and then provided that positive attention once she was settled down and re-engaged back with the group. So, challenging behaviors can look like a lot of things, not just, somebody's upset and crying during circle time, but very many other ways. But these are the essential strategies that we really want to kind of hone our skills around. There is a website called challengingbehaviors.org that is the National Center for Pyramid Model Implementation. On that website, they have huge resource library, completely open to the public. You don't have to create an account. It's completely free. They have so many family resources that help address a lot of challenging behaviors. So how do we help our child stop biting? How do we help them stop hitting or pushing? Because a lot of the times these challenging behaviors are happening at home too. And so if we can give our families a one-page resource about things and that they can do and practice at home will really help us get them on track in the classroom as well. What's also amazing about these resources, they're called Backpack Connection Series. What's great about the Backpack Connection Series is they also come in so many languages. So a lot of the resources have been translated into Spanish, Creole, Arabic, French, quite a few different languages so that we can send home information that can be easily understood by our dual language families. So we do have this quote here: if we are not intentionally teaching children social skills or emotional competencies, we are forever going to be responding to challenging behavior instead of giving them the tools that they need to behave differently. So even though these strategies we've talked about are great, we really want to prevent and teach as well. Prevention as much as possible, and then teaching replacement skills for those challenging behaviors. When we're thinking about children who are in need of these intensive individualized intervention supports to address persistent challenging behavior, we're still keeping all of the supports we've covered, including those responsive relationships, the supportive environments, and the promotion of both social and emotional skills. So we have talked about some of these ideas when we have been talking about challenging behavior, but we really want to also think about additional factors that can influence how we as teachers or directors respond to challenging behaviors. So we'll go into detail just a little bit further on these next few slides when we think about deficit thinking versus strength-based thinking. We'll also discuss how our personal implicit bias can impact our reactions to behavior and explore how a person's decision state influences how we respond to children in different situations. So implicit bias is going to be defined as the attitudes or stereotypes that affect our understanding, actions, and decisions in an unconscious manner. So this bias may be very unconscious, but it will influence our response to children with persistent challenging behavior. Awareness of this implicit bias can really result in a decrease of biased behavior. It's important that we're aware of our decision state. So, whether we're tired or hungry or just frustrated with the day, and the elements of each situation. So, are there situations where we are more likely to react harshly or less thoughtfully? Are there biases that might affect how we respond to a behavior? So these biases are often unconscious, but can influence how a teacher responds to children's challenging behavior. So the good news of this is that becoming aware of these biases can result in a decrease of biased behavior. And so, for teachers responding to challenging behavior, two parts of the situation should be considered to help reduce the likeliness of harsh responses that may be influenced by bias. So, this is going to include elements of the situation and our personal decision state. So, we'll look at these two components here now. So, in an effort to reduce making decisions that may be influenced by bias, we should consider the elements of the situation. So, are we making a really quick decision? Aside from any issues of safety, can we pause before deciding how to address the challenging behavior? Is this a high stakes situation that could result in the use of exclusionary practices such as suspension or expulsion? And we want to take into consideration the time of day as well as where the incident is occurring. So, is the time of day influencing our response as a teacher? Maybe it's the end of the day and we are exhausted and tired and thinking of all the things we have to do when we get back home. And this is going to make us less tolerant of the behavior because we are feeling that way. Another example might be how you respond in the middle of a transition versus how you respond during circle time. During a really busy transition, we may not have the focused attention needed to redirect the child effectively. Location is another thing to consider. So, is this happening in the hallway or is this happening in the classroom? Is the environment in which the incident occurred contributing to how we are responding to this challenging behavior? When we talk about personal decision state, think about how you're feeling right now. It's the middle of the day on Tuesday. Are you feeling tired, hungry? Or did you not sleep well last night? So, in the chat box, go ahead and drop one thing that you're feeling or that you're thinking today that might impact how you handle your classroom for the rest of the afternoon. Miss Christie's fatigued, tired. Maybe you just haven't had, maybe we haven't had enough coffee yet today. That's okay. Tired with a headache, lots to do. Thank you for sharing, ladies. So, our decision state is also really important in addressing these implicit biases. When we make decisions when we're tired or stressed or frustrated, we might be responding in a way that doesn't lend itself to teaching and supporting a behavior change. We might often have to respond differently if we aren't tired or stressed out. Given the negative impacts of suspension and expulsion, we do have to self reflect and make sure that our personal decision state isn't influencing our responses. And that's tricky because, especially if we have one kiddo that, demonstrates these challenging behaviors on a very regular basis, it can be really hard to see that from a very objective standpoint. But it is important to remember and take into consideration when thinking about how we're going to respond to a challenging behavior. So we're going to look at how strategies might impact the way we respond to a situation. So we're going to look at a situation with the ABCs. So A is going to be our antecedent. That is what has happened right before the behavior occurs. B is going to be for the behavior that we see or hear happening. And C is going to be how we respond immediately after a behavior has happened. So this is going to be intended to look at an example of how a teacher's behavior can escalate the situation or respond in a way that isn't helpful to that child. So we will have many opportunities when handling our challenging behaviors to de-escalate the situation. So this example, Delilah has interrupted the story at circle time 4 times today. This is the second week in a row Delilah has done this, and her teacher is losing patience. Hands up if you have one of those kiddos in your classroom right now, or a yes or no in the chat box. Got a kiddo who is interrupting circle time all day? Percy gave me a thumbs up. Miss Debbie's got one. Miss Ariel's got one. A couple of them, Casey. So the teacher asks, we're going to think about this. The teacher asks Delilah to sit at a table in the back until she can stop calling out. And then the consequence of this is Delilah becomes visibly upset and begins crying for a prolonged period of time. The longer she's at the table, the more intense she's crying. So instead of this, we want to think about what other strategies the teacher might try instead. So if the teacher reflects on her behavior and how it resulted in Delilah leaving the room and having to take time out of an activity, this is not something we want to have happen. And so, we think about what strategies the teacher could try to use as an alternative response so as not to escalate the situation. So there are different components that might impact our decision when we handle situations similar to Delilah's. So again, think about the elements of the situation, right? The location, the time of day, attributes to the behavior. Are we feeling tired, fatigued, hungry? Are we really just kind of sick of this happening 2 weeks in a row? Those are going to be really important to keep in your brain. So when we want to respond differently, we want to consider different factors impacting our decision. So Delilah's interrupted circle time. This is still the second week in a row that she's done this. But now she's going to count to 3, and she's going to recognize that she's tired of having to deal with the situation. She's feeling really irritable. She has allowed herself just a couple seconds, some time to view the situation differently. And by changing her response, we're not going to escalate the situation, and Delilah's going to be able to remain in the classroom. So the teacher knows that Delilah's going to need some extra practice and prompts when she gets excited by the story and might forget to follow those circle time rules. So we want to think about what strategies could the teacher try as an alternative response. And again, considering the elements of the situation, our personal decision state. So if the teacher reminds Delilah to raise her hand and wait to hear her name before offering her answer, We're also going to show a visual prompt associated with that behavior expectation rule. And yeah, we might ignore her. Again, remembering to ignore the behavior, not the child. And that way we can allow the student to stay with us, but not allow it to interrupt the activity. And so if we use that visual, we remind her of those behavior expectations. And then remember, we use that positive feedback as soon as she stops interrupting. Now, the teachers reminded her to raise her hand. Delilah starts to yell out again, but she sees that visual. We might have to point to that visual again, but this time Delilah does raise her hand, but she's still yelling out. So we're going to use that positive feedback because she's trying, she's making an attempt to adjust and correct her behavior. So we're going to thank her for raising her hand. Okay, we've got part of that adjustment made. And we're going to remind her to wait to hear her name next time. And so then in this situation, we are going to hope that Delilah is going to nod and smile. Okay, so just taking a second, recognizing that you're feeling tired and irritable. We might adjust the way we respond to a challenging behavior to make the result a little bit more effective for us. So when we think about deficit thinking is where we may identify assumptions about families or children that could limit the extent in which we try to provide supports for them. So maybe we're not feeling a change could ever be made. So we're accepting a defeat before real interventions have been tried. While we may say that we hold all children to high expectations, if they are, if we have this kind of thinking going on, then we are kind of putting ourselves in a situation where we believe that some children are just limited by nature. Teachers might believe that certain children need to be fixed, and we are expressing that there's something wrong with the child. So, statements like, some children will never be able to learn like the other children. Bottom line, if parents value education, the child will succeed. Look at Anna's family. They come to school every day, and she has no behavior concerns. Those children have parents that have been in jail. No wonder there are issues. And I don't think there is anything I can do to fix that child because too much has happened in their life. So it's natural sometimes for us to begin with this deficit thinking, but we want to change the narrative, and we want to change the way we look at and see the children that we're teaching and we're supporting. So in these cases, we're making negative attributions to behavior of specific children. And in some of these instances, we may actually be escalating the behavior by making these negative attributions, or our deficit thinking might result in harsh discipline practices. So other statements, she wants to be waited on because her mom does everything for her at home. She's spoiled. This is the third child she's pushed down this week. I don't blame the other children for not wanting to play with her. He ruined my circle activity today. He kept yelling out. I had to stop 5 times. And he brought the same toy I told him to leave at home for the 4th time. So, if these thoughts pop up into your brain, no worries, it happens. But we do want to recognize them, and we do want to change the narrative to a more strength-based approach. When we're referencing children within a strength-based approach, we're recognizing a certain set of beliefs. It is not only about thinking positive things. It is not a way of avoiding the truth or about accommodating bad behavior or fixating on problems or minimizing concerns. It's not one-sided, and it's not a tool to label individuals. Children do grow and develop from their strengths and abilities, and all children have strengths and abilities. So when we take this strength-based approach and we reframe those deficit statements that we just looked at, instead of thinking the child's father is in prison and the mother is completely overwhelmed, no wonder he's a mess. We might change that narrative instead and say, we might say instead, all families have challenges. How can I support every child's family in my class? Okay, acknowledging that people experience difficulties and challenges that do need attention and support. Here's our deficit statement. Brent ruined my circle activity today. He kept yelling out and I had to stop my story 5 times. Okay, so we're gonna instead focus on what the child can do. So when Brent yelled out, he was answering questions from the story. He must have been very interested. So these are some more reframing, or these are some more of the deficit framing that we would want to reframe with the strength-based approach. And so, some children will never be able to learn like the other children. We might say instead, some children learn visually, some children learn through hearing it, some children learn hands-on. If the parents value education, the child would succeed. We might say, the family is doing their best. Maybe they have a hard lifeship situation going on. How can I get them more involved? Or I don't think there's anything I can do to fix that child. Too much has happened in their life. So maybe they have had a lot happen in their life. What can we do to support them so that they know that they come to school loved and taken care of? So this next section is going to be about de-escalating behaviors. So we're going to go back to Delilah and the teacher with interrupting circle time. And the behavior is the teacher's going to ask Delilah to sit at the table in the back until she stops calling out. This is where she gets upset and starts crying. So escalating dangerous behavior, this is going to be a very specific sequence of behaviors that increase in intensity, frequency, or volume. And de-escalating is going to be a sequence of dangerous behaviors that decrease in intensity and or frequency or volume. So the focus on these strategies we can use to de-escalate dangerous behavior and the cycle of de-escalation. And so here's going to be the cycle that we look at. Okay, so whenever a situation happens, we're going to have that trigger. And then as the situation progresses, we're going to have the agitation. It's going to peak at the very top of that challenging behavior. After the situation has ended, the de-escalation will start to happen, and then we'll enter into what we call recovery. Okay, so this is an example of an escalation cycle. Tyler's playing with an airplane. Sarah comes over and grabs the airplane. Tyler yells, "Give it back." Tyler runs to Sarah and yells, "That's mine," and grabs the airplane. Tyler's going to grab Sarah's arm and try to bite her. The teacher is going to separate the children. Tyler's going to stomp his feet with his eyes darting and teeth clenched, and he's going to follow Tyler's going to follow the teacher prompt to take a deep breath. He's then going to sit with his head in his arm and pout. And after a couple minutes, he's going to go back and try and play with the blocks. So if we were in a situation similar to this, we would want to think through if our response would look the same, what intensified the escalation, what were some strategies that we used to de-escalate, and why did we ask, or why are we reflecting on our own responses? Was that the right response? for the child, for the challenging behavior, and for the situation in itself. Okay, so that the trigger, the agitation, which moves to escalate to the peak. Sorry, and then we'll see that de-escalation and recovery after addressing. We do want to have safety net procedures. And so rules for safety net procedures, these are going to be procedures that keep the other children and you as the teacher hopefully safe from harm. So if a child is in danger of harming him or herself or others, we must first be concerned about safety. So we might have to remove a child from a situation or remove other children from the situation to keep the rest of the children safe. Safety net procedures should be planned for children who have a history of dangerous outbursts. So if you're a teacher, make sure that you collaborate with your director to create a safety net procedure for a student who has a history of these dangerous outbursts. If you are a director and you know of a child in your program that does have these dangerous behaviors, it would be beneficial to have this safety net procedure and make sure that the teacher knows, okay, when this student starts throwing blocks around the room, you go ahead and give me a call and say this specific code word, and I'll come in to help address the situation. Safety net procedures only keep the children safe. They do not change the behavior itself. These are only appropriate when there's also a full behavior support plan or an intention to develop a plan, and they should be designed in collaboration with a team. And that team is going to be the teacher, the director, anybody who is hands-on with the child's well-being. So family, caregivers, therapists will all need to be part of creating this safety net procedure for maximum effectiveness. So we all have probably been in a power struggle with children. And so we do want to make sure we avoid this. So take a step back, take a deep breath, maybe count yourself to 10 to stay calm. And we're going to try and maintain this posture of empathy. With the escalation cycle, with the de-escalation component, this is going to focus on removing excess attention. So we're not going to nag, we're not going to blame, we're not going to force an apology at this point. We're going to focus on the function of that challenging behavior. And then at the very end, with our recovery section, this is going to be after the child has calmed down and is able to compose themselves enough to return to activities. We're going to provide some very descriptive feedback of all the appropriate behavior that we see to encourage that appropriate behavior, and we're going to support them re-engaging with the group. So that was a kind of a lot of content to go over, but what I'd like to do, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. What I'd like to do is, how many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, we have a small group today. We'll stay in this main room together then, and what I'd like for you to think about, and you can either unmute yourself. We have about 15 minutes that we can kind of just have an open discussion about the content that we covered today. If there's a specific child that you're thinking of, or if there's a strategy from today's session that you'd like to try out, I just want to go ahead and open the floor and get your thoughts on today's session.
I have a question in regards to the full behavior support plan. Is that something that someone on your team is able to help us with, or with us serving children 5 and up, should we consult a behaviorist?
That's a great question. We have supported creating behavior support plans before. We do a whole training on it. We just did a full training open up on the 13th, which went really well. If that's a training that you feel like you and your staff would benefit from, we can certainly schedule something like that. And I can even go over the content with you. to see if you feel like it would support your 5 and ups. The strategies and the procedure is going to look the same for almost any child age group.
Very good. Yeah, I wasn't cool enough to get in on time on the 13th. Definitely intrigued by it though.
Yeah, I'll write myself a note and I'll contact you separately so we can either look at some training dates for you and your staff, or even just a training with just you, depending on what your needs are.
Thank you.
Mhm. It's now time for Miss Debbie. Okay. Ms. Casey or Miss Evelyn or Miss Ariel, do you guys have any questions, comments, concerns?
I need, like she was saying, for the 5 and up, but I need for the like the twos. Is any kind of program for them, and 2s and 3s, because we having some challenge between that age.
Yeah, so with even the behavior support plan workshop that we ran, and even the process for creating a behavior support plan for individual children, the process would look the same for 2s and 3s, because a big part of it is preventing the event, preventing it as much as possible from happening. And that's going to come from collecting data to see, is there a time of day that this happens at? Is there a particular trigger to this challenging behavior? And then we're going to want to teach them appropriate replacement skills. And so if we see biting in a 2-year-old, we want to make sure that we teach them an appropriate replacement skill for to remove that biting. And then we want to reinforce the skills as they're using them with that positive descriptive feedback. That might also look like stickers or high fives, or it can look like a lot of things depending on what works well for the student and their family.
Okay. Do you do like for staffing? Do you do training for the staffing?
Yes, we can.
Okay, that's what I think mostly that's what I need, staff to see how I look and what to do, how to handle it. That's what I'm noticing.
Yeah. Okay. I have you down, Ms. Evelyn. I'll give you a call separately as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So Ms. Casey said she felt good about everything. Miss Debbie, she likes the consent of ignoring the behavior and not the child. Awesome.
I guess I have a follow-up question comment in terms of, Miss Anderson saying that some team members need it. How quickly do we recognize that a team member isn't bought in? And do we potentially present, this is how we do things before we even hire somebody? I know we talk about situations during the interview process, but perhaps with this being very detailed, in terms of we expect challenging behaviors and this is how we deal with it, are you willing to be on board? And then, like I initially started with, how quickly do we acknowledge that they're not going to get on board and may not be the right fit?
That's a great question. And I don't know that I know the full answer for that, unfortunately, Christy, but I do think it would be a good idea to be upfront about, like, this is the process, this is a procedure about how we address challenging behaviors, so that we can try to eliminate suspensions and expulsions as much as possible within our program, right? We want to try and keep as many kids in our program as possible to give them that stability. We do have teachers in the field who are who find change challenging and who find that observation process and that behavior support plan process really time consuming and tedious. And it certainly can be, especially to implement and follow through. But if they're not involved, and if they're not willing to be involved, I think that's a call for you as a director of how long you want to try and keep making it work.
I tend to be as patient with the children as I am with the adults, and then oftentimes it backfires.
I understand.
The children have a more growth mindset than some of the adults do.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, ladies, well, I'm gonna give you some of your time back today. Ms. Shai is gonna go ahead and drop the evaluation in the chat box for us. So these are how you get your in-service training certificates by the email address that you use to fill the form out. We do look at every single training evaluation to make sure that we are providing relevant, important content in a manner that is easily understandable and engaging. So please give us some feedback and let us know how we can continue to make these trainings as awesome as we can. And with that, I think, am I forgetting anything, Shai? All right. Well, happy Tuesday, ladies. Hope you have a wonderful day. And I will call Christy and Evelyn separately to get something scheduled with you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.